It's time for another episode of The Oil Stream with Dustin Nielson and Tom Gazzola, presented by Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Friday episode of The Oil Stream, brought to you by Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen. Get your hands on that delicious Popeye's chicken sandwich. 12 locations, 7 of them smack dab in the Edmonton area, available on DoorDash, Skip the Dishes, Uber Eats, and of course you can whip through the drive-thru as well. And Tommy, Chantal has done it again.
You like the coif, Chantal?
I like it.
I told her, I said, Chantal, I got to get this haircut and then I got to be on camera for the oil stream. So you're on today. And she goes, so what I'm doing is on camera. I'm like, yep. And she goes, well, it doesn't matter what I do. When the cut's done and it's after today, you're just going to grease it back, aren't you? And I'm like, maybe. Yeah, well. But yeah, this is all Chantal. I said, you're on the spot today. So she did a good job. Hey, she found a gray. And I'm very concerned.
Oh, really? Yeah. So how'd she drop that on you? Like, did she just go, oh my God, Tommy? Or how did it come about?
She got some kind of sick joy out of it. And she said it in French. She goes, regarde un cheveu gris. And I was like, you didn't just find a gray hair. She's like, you've got a gray hair. And I was like, oh no. So I'm a little bit concerned. I might have to start using the Grecian 5 right away here at 35 years of age, which is crazy because my dad didn't go gray until like his late 50s. So this is scary, dude.
I was going to say, you look rattled. Like my hair, I don't know if I haven't found a gray in my hair yet. I mean, do I want to pull it out all day? Yes, I do. But in my beard, down here, starting to see some grays in the chin.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, I guess, a little bit easier to deal with than actually finding a gray up here, buddy. So What do you do? How do you spend this weekend? You need to go out and live a little, Tommy. It could all be over soon.
Well, I mean, I've got some solutions. I mean, you could get that Control GX Smart Shampoo. It could be from like a scar, you know how it kills the pigment in the hair. That might be it. Cause I think I've cut my head a couple of times around that area. And she goes, Chantal gets like some kind of sick pleasure out of this. And so I said, keep an eye on it, Chantal, and she will. And undoubtedly she'll either make fun of me or she'll break it to me softly. But she did a good job with the hair today. It's got the feathered flow. She put hairspray. I don't use hairspray. I use a couple of pomades, but it's nice to not have like bushy hair on the back and the sides, Dusty. When I looked down on the ground when she was sweeping everything up, it looked like a small dead animal on the floor of her salon.
That's like when I used to grow that afro back in the day. Yeah. When I go in for that cut, that was a garbage bag full, man. That was interesting.
I remember those days.
Dangle Dump is in and says, that's the problem with being a partial ginger, Dusty. I've got the same problem. And that's it. Back when I was in my early 20s and it was not a good look. I was doing Shaw TV WHL games in Lethbridge. Right. And I only had a goatee. I didn't have like the mustache, nothing. I just had the goat, and it was almost a full-blown ginger goat. Like my hair up here was dark, ginger goat, and now that ginger is becoming a little gray. Not too bad, but
a little salt in there.
Just a couple of old guys talking Oilers here today, Tommy. That's what we got today.
Not old, distinguished.
That's good. I like that. All right. We're going to just focus on goalies here for a Friday episode. And a lot of this actually stems from one of the questions on, obviously. Oh, actually, Tommy, before we get to it, I knew you were going to have a new haircut today, so I wanted to debut my new Travis Matthews hat.
Nice.
I was at the ranch, went in to pick up a large bucket yesterday, and usually I save my golf apparel purchases to go see our buddy Murray down at Gulf Town in the south.
Right. Yep.
But I saw this hat and it popped to me. I said, I got to have it. And it was $45, which is a lot for a hat. But what do you think? Like, I think this just looks tight.
It is sharp. It fits well. It's symmetrical. Is that neon yellow under the M?
No, I think it's just.
Is it white?
It's just white.
Yeah, that looks good. That looks really good. That's a good pickup.
Yeah.
That's going to be a good hat for a long time. I like
It's good for
Travis Matthews.
golfing.
I don't
It's
have
good
much
for
of its stuff.
streaming.
Yep.
Covers everything.
What else do you need it for?
Now I can write it off. We talked about it. This is perfect.
There you go. Perfect.
All right, Tommy, let's start with the goaltending. And the question that got people kind of fired up today, my answer to it on the show was, what's the percentage chance that Koskinen and Smith are both back next year? What would you set that chance at? Because Rashog and I, we had the same number, which surprised me a little bit because I thought I might have been a little bit high. So what's that number for you, do you think?
That it's that tandem next year?
Yeah, those are the two guys.
30%.
Okay.
It's pretty clear that Smith is the go-to guy, and the intention is to bring him back. And I would assume there's an appetite from his side to come back and continue what he's built up with the Oilers. So I really, and I know, we heard the buyout talk. I really think Mikko Koskinen is the way to go with the buyout. You're not paying for a guy for 4 years compared to doing it with James Neal. It's less money, I know, but that also lets you have a better backup goalie in Alex Stalock for a fraction of the price at $785,000. And we don't have to deal with this ongoing discussion of Koskinen Smith. It's over and done with. Smith is your starter. Stalock's your backup. He's reliable, dependable, doesn't cost anything. He can give you wins. And I think he shows up in tough situations, pressure situations, better than Mikko Koskinen. Koskinen, over his 3 years as an Oiler, has proven you give him the ball, that ball gets dropped more times than not.
I had the number of 40%. So did Rashog. Actually, so did Low Tide. And I know you've been pretty heavily leaning towards Koskinen not being around. So I'm actually surprised that you have the number as high as 30%. What do you think would be the circumstances in which they are both back, Tommy?
They don't have faith in Smith to play 60-odd games, and they think that Koskinen could be serviceable and dependable. Which I don't really believe is the case. I'd have to deep dive a little bit more because my own bias obviously weighs into this. But yeah, I mean, like, you go and you get Alex Stalock. He's got a year left. He's cheaper. He's just as serviceable as Mikko Koskinen. Why are you hanging on to this guy at $4.5 million, who again lets you down? I mean, to me, the real stamp for Mikko Koskinen to sum him up was that game against Vancouver, where he got shelled for 4 goals on 4 shots in 12 and a half minutes. That's the one where you're like, no more, no mas. This has to be it.
If it's because the buyouts would have to happen before free agency, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So you would have to buy out Koskinen. Would you be comfortable? Let's say they buy out Koskinen and can't get anybody in free agency. So except for Smith, let's say Smith. Are you comfortable with Smith and Stalock, who's still under contract? Like, do you see that as a risky play?
No, I don't. I think that's an improvement in the goaltending department. I think that Stalock is a better goalie than Mikko Koskinen. I think he's more dependable and reliable. He won 20 games in 19-20. He started for Minnesota in the postseason on what was not necessarily a very good Minnesota Wild team. So I think a lot of that gets brushed aside and forgotten, and people like to point out Valen Camus 920, although that charge died late in the season, and rightly so. But it's Dusty, the numbers are one thing, and a lot of people point to them when they defend Mikko Koskinen, and he has had good moments with the Oilers. There's no denying that. He was a pleasant surprise at certain points last season. I gave him credit where credit was due. But it's the timing of the goals he allows. It's the type of goals that he allows. And it's not just small instances of it. It is a consistent thing. It's a pattern. It's recurring. It's part of his MO. It's not going to change for him at 32 years of age. That's why I say you cut bait, be done with this terrible contract that Peter Chiarelli gifted you as a parting gift, and move on. And it only, you only pay for it for 2 years as opposed to 4 with a Neal buyout.
A classic comment here from a Nielsen stream regular, piss_jug. He says,
Piss jug.
0% chance that they come back with both of them. He adds, Gage has a better chance at being brought back by the Oil than Koskinen does. So Gager would be open to it, obviously, but I don't know about that. I don't know about that happening.
Shout out to PJ, by the way. He's an avid listener to 1260, and I know he worked for the Blades for a while too. So what's up, PJ? I'll see you on the golf course hopefully this summer. Also,
plot twist: Valen Camus, the revolution in Finnish, was actually all about Jesse Puljärvi the entire time. The real revolution. How crazy is that, Tommy?
I want one of those T-shirts now.
Exactly. We'll just put Puljärvi's face over the top of it. By the way, with Puljärvi, just quickly, our friends at Pro-Am have got a Puljärvi signing booked. So visit them at proamsports.ca. Sign up to get your JP swag. Not PJ, not piss jug. JP, Jesse Puljärvi. All right, so let's say, I'm trying to lay out the process here. So we know they want Mike Smith back. If they buy out Koskinen, they will go into free agency looking to add a goaltender. And I think, maybe the best way to go about this is you're going to buy out, if you buy out Koskinen, yes, you hit 1.5 this year, 1.5 next, but you free up $3 million in cap space. Tommy, do you think they can just straight up use just that $3 million to get a Dreger, to get a Mrazek type? Like, do you think that's reasonable, and do you think that's the plan, or do they gotta aim higher?
If it's Smith coming back, I say it's Smith and Stalock. Like, I'm not using that money. You would
stick with Stalock, eh?
Yes. Like, we're overthinking this backup thing way too much, okay?
I like it.
Look at Vancouver right now. They had Thatcher Demko, and they went out and got Braden Holtby. They're trying to cut bait with Holtby now. They needed a backup or a guy to be a partial number one, and it didn't work. You got Smith, you got Stalock, both guys who were number ones, one guy last year and the other guy 2 years ago. Like, what more do you need? All right, like you prove you could do very well with a lesser backup in Mikko Koskinen than Alex Stalock last season. You got second in the division for a second straight year. Why do you need another guy that's been around for 1 year? Because this is going to lead into our question of the day, the Ken Morrison question of the day. So I would take the money you would save from buying out Koskinen, put it towards going and getting some impact forwards that can provide scoring depth. Like, your goaltending's fine. Those two guys, Smith and Stalock, are going to be fine with this team.
Oh boy!
Do people hate it? I don't care if people hate it.
I like the idea of having that extra money to go. If you're only spending $3 million, which is what it would be, you'd be spending $3 million plus a 1.5 buyout of Koskinen, whatever. You're going to try to fill that money somewhere else. So you're spending $3.5 million bucks on your goaltending, which very much allows you to address. Like, I think that's a sound strategy, but at the same time, if Smith gets hurt or doesn't play as well as he did this past year, which I do believe in him. Like, I think he'd be a good guy to bring back. I want him back.
Sure.
But if something happens to him, are you okay with running with Stalock and one of the other guys from the American League that we'll discuss in a second? Like, I feel like there's a little bit of a risk value there. And I do wish we would have got to see Stalock at some point, because as somebody pointed out on the live stream here, Stalock has not played a hockey game in a year, which is a little concerning if you're going to just roll with those two guys. So I love the idea of having more money to spend elsewhere. So I want to buy into what you're saying at that point, but I also get a little nervous with the depth situation, I guess, with Smith and Stalock. Although you made a good point. Stalock was excellent a couple years ago.
I understand the reservation, the concern, and at 39, turning 40 next season, it's real with Mike Smith. Like, hey, can he stick it out and stay healthy? Did it last year, though, which was good. That's a good sign, but who knows? Every new year, new challenges, new situations present themselves. At some point here, and this is part of the question of the day, like, I'm just going to say this as an aside. I'll just say this as an aside. When are you going to finally let one of these prospects play an NHL game and try to figure out if they're NHL goalies?
And we'll get to that in 1 second. I want one more on Koskinen.
Okay.
Do you think in any way they find a taker for him on $1.5 million retained so they don't have to worry about the next year? Like, Do you think there's a chance that happens, or is this just buyout city?
To me, that scenario is the best. Obviously, you get rid of the contract, you get rid of the player, you're done with it. It doesn't linger for another year after. I don't see it happening, Dusty, unless there's a team out there that's so desperate for a 1B, quote unquote, or just a backup that they'd be willing to take that on. Like, you'd have to find a very peculiar scenario, something where a team likes him and needs a goalie and is willing to take him on. And I don't know if that's out there. I like that scenario more than the buyout, but I think the buyout is probably the likelier route in this situation.
So outside of Smith, you really don't have much interest in any of the free agents? Like, you don't do you think they'll be active in that? Or, well, I mean, it's Freddie Anderson, maybe on a 1 year or something like that. Linus Ullmark, Mrazek. I mean, Rask isn't going anywhere. James Reimer. Grubauer's going to be too pricey. Brian Elliott's, Bernier, Yarrow Halak. I don't mind Yarrow Halak, but yeah. Like, do you think do you think Kenny Holland's working the phones pretty hard for another goalie? He works the phones hard for everything, though. So that's
he does. I mean, he calls on everybody all the time, but I don't know if that's the priority, or if he gets Smith and then says, "Well, I have 3 NHL goalies. I got to get rid of one of them." And like, I think the priority is just getting to Smith. I don't know if one of those, I like some of those names as a temporary go-between, but I don't know how realistic. That's just me, though.
All right, well, temporary go-between does kind of bring us back around to where we were headed with the Ken Morrison RE/MAX Excellence question of the day. Give him a call, 780-993-4815. It is brought to you by kenrmorrison.com. That's his website if you're buying or selling. kenrmorrison.com is the place to go. We talked about it on the last episode, actually, when I mentioned we do the Elks stream. Once the Elks get fired up, Ken emailed and was just like, "Hey, I'm interested in the Elk stream. If you guys fire it up," I was just like, "You're a beauty, buddy." Like, he's just on board for local content, which I absolutely love. But it's a Ken Morrison RE/MAX question of the day, and we're focusing on goalies today. Tommy, what do you got?
All right, the Ken Morrison RE/MAX question of the day is this, because the goalies is what is in the spotlight. Dusty, which of the 3 up-and-coming goalies in the prospect pool emerges as the front runner and distinguishes themselves as the goalie of the future for the Edmonton Oilers? And here's the bonus sweetener on top. When does that finally happen? Is it Konovalov? Is it Stuart Skinner? Is it Rodrigue? Or does Wells come out of nowhere and assert himself? Because like I said before, at some point, one of these guys, 2 of these guys are going to have to play NHL games. And you're going to have to test them and see if they're actually capable and ready to be NHLers. And goalies take time. We just saw Thatcher Demko take the reins in Vancouver. That took years. So that's the Ken Morrison question of the day.
Well, Calder Trophy nominee Nedeljkovic was drafted 7 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, it takes a while for some of these guys. To me, the most likely answer is still going to be Konovalov. I think he's been an absolute stud. Now, I know a lot of those goaltending numbers in the KHL, Koskinen came over with a 930, for goodness sakes. But you know, I am a little sucker for anybody coming from overseas, obviously. But I still think Konovalov is the best hope to find somebody from within. Now, I'm not trying to take a shot at Skinner, because I know he just had a really good year. Yep. But his really good year was 914 in the American Hockey League. And this is followed up by the other 2 years where some of it was in the East Coast League, some of it was in the AHL, and in the AHL it was sub 9. So I'm not ready to sit here and say, wow, Skinner can back up Smith next year if Stalock ends up, if they move him or something. Like, I'm not ready. I don't think he's there yet. Like, I'd like to see him post a 920 for a full season in the American Hockey League and get 6 or 7 games in the NHL. And when he did, we saw him this year, right? He got that start this year. And it came up a couple weeks ago, or even last week, maybe, on 2 guys and a goalie. And Gager described him as looking scared shitless in that game, which I thought he did too. Which is fine. I mean, it's your first game and you're sitting around not playing in quite some time. So I mean, I'm not going to judge him based on that game, but I'd like to see 6 or 7 games mixed in here with a couple of good performances. So I still think Konovalov has the better upside. But I wouldn't go as far even with Konovalov that the future between the pipes for the Oilers is already in the organization, Tommy.
Ooh, and that's the one where you're like, boy, is the cupboards full, and does that translate to being at the NHL level? And they're in a predicament too, time-wise. Like, is bringing back Smith for, let's say, a year with a Stalock or Koskinen, whoever, enough to let these guys ripen to the point where they're ready to come in the following year, share the net with somebody probably, and then eventually take over? Like, this is still a couple years down the road. And this team is in win now mode, right? We know it's win now mode. Look at Samsonov in Washington. He's not even the guy. He lost that job this year. It was a mess. I mean, obviously off the ice stuff came into play, and
I think he likes to
I don't know,
party a little bit with Kuzi, which causes some issues, but not ideal.
No kidding. Yeah, so it's that one's it's a bit of a mystery, and there's a cloud and shroud of who knows there, and that's something I'm curious about.
I don't think it's too crazy. Like I said, I'm not so in love with one of these prospects that he's the guy moving forward. I don't think it's too crazy to think that one of Skinner or Konovalov, which I think, is that what they're going to do in the A? Is it going to be Konovalov and Skinner next year? Anyway, well, that's what I mean. I don't know. It's a tough spot. So I don't think it's crazy to think that one of those guys does have a really good year in the AHL next year. Skinner, because he's got so much experience there already. Konovalov, maybe just because he's a really good goalie. And then one of them can play 25 games for you, not this year, but next year, right? Yeah. So I think that would be, at this stage, I think best case scenario for what they got in the organization. Which does bring us back around to another question. Before I do that, I just want to give everybody a quick heads up that the Oil Stream, we stream it here on Twitter, but it's also streaming on YouTube as well. So give me a sub on the YouTube channel. How's that sound, Tommy?
Buddy, I love it.
Nielsen Media and Entertainment. Just search Nielsen Media and Entertainment on YouTube. And then if you prefer YouTube, you can watch these on YouTube. It's streaming on YouTube right now as well, and on 1260's Facebook page, and then here on Twitter, which is kind of the mainstream. But sub on YouTube today, Nielsen Media, search it out, you'll find it. Tommy, the other thing that could play in here, would you consider using, if you keep it, the first round pick this year on a goaltender? If Kosa is still there when you're picking wherever they're picking around 20, or the Swedish kid, is it a Swedish kid, the other goalie? I think he's a Swedish kid, but I think I can't remember. There's some pretty good goaltending prospects available this year. I know people hate the idea of using a first on a goalie. Kosa looks like the real deal. Local guy, not sure. Well, I'm not sure that helps in this situation, but it hasn't panned out before drafting of the Oil Kings. But would you consider that at all? Like, would you wait until you get to that pick and then you say, oh, we got a deal for it, let's move it. Oh, but the goalie's still there, let's take him. Like, how would you handle that?
I think the deal would probably take precedence over the pick of the goalie if Kosa's still there. And I understand that. So, you have to be down to like plan B or C if you're going to just pick him if he's still there, I think. That's my gut instinct at this point.
Yeah. Exhaust every option via trade. And we're not just talking goalies for trade. Like, you could use that pick to address anything else in the organization.
Absolutely.
If you're sitting there, to me, I think it would have to be the point where it's not close between drafting another forward and a goalie. Like, all the forwards you like are off the board, and you're like, hey, wow, so-and-so still there between the pipes. Let's pull the trigger on it. Like, that's probably where it would have to be. I don't think you go in to the draft saying, no matter what, even if we have to move up a few spots, we're getting our hands on this kid.
Right. And at the same time, what are you telling Konovalov, Skinner, and Rodrigue by doing that? Right. And these are guys you're investing in to be the next guy and hoping one of them emerges. 2 of them in an ideal world, all 3 of them if you're living in a fantasy world, because it's probably highly unlikely. But the message it sends too isn't a great one.
This is going to be a fun offseason with just the goaltending, buddy. Like,
oh my goodness, I know.
I appreciate your passion for Smith and Stalock. I do wonder what the reaction would be like in the city. What do you think the fan base would think if it's Smith and Stalock? Not good? I mean, probably not good, but are they any worse off? I mean, that's really in the end. They might not be better off, but they're not worse off than they were.
But and that's the case I'm trying to make is like your goaltending is not worse if you are going with Smith and Stalock. It is the same, if not more reliable, I think, than Smith and Koskinen. And it's a hard, I mean, people are all over the place, especially Oilers fans on this one. Some people were just clamoring for Stalock, especially after that shelling that Koskinen took against Vancouver. And others just want a different goalie to come in. Like there's no number one. Everybody wants this one thing to happen. It's all over the place. It feels like with the goalies right now.
B. Baylor on Twitter, and I'll do this. He says, Dusty, you got to do a mock lineup with Smith and Stalock and see how you can spend that money everywhere else. I'm going to drop that this weekend, Tommy. That'll be if you're not spending an additional $4 million on the goalie, you could put together a pretty nice lineup, I think. And
I like that
I'll drop that this weekend.
Much.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I think if you need to save money by buying someone out, buy it out. Don't go and get another goalie when you've got two goalies sitting there that have been in the NHL for a while and generally are pretty good. Like that to me is counterproductive. Go spend that money and get that forward that's going to give you some offensive depth and pop and reliability. Like that's the way I've been looking at this the entire time.
Well said, buddy. We'll have to do a goalie episode basically every Friday, I guess, until they solve the issues between the pipe.
Yeah.
Hey, somebody is complimenting you on your haircut, by the way, just quickly.
Thank you.
Yeah. What do you want to
say? Don't forget to smash that like button and mess with the algorithm. And don't forget to subscribe, please and thank you. Us influencers live off of that, It's YouTube life.
Sub on YouTube. You can find the Oil Stream on YouTube. Just search Nielsen Media and Entertainment. You'll find the Oil Stream. You'll find two guys in a goalie. You'll find the lock shop. It's all there in one convenient place. Good work, Tommy. You got the haircut of a social media influencer. You got to do it. You got to take advantage of it.
Yeah. Please hashtag this video on YouTube with influencer because it's only fitting.
I don't even know how that works.
Me neither.
Gazzola, have a great weekend, buddy, and we'll catch up again on Wednesday.
Can't wait, Dusty. You too, my friend.
There you go. For Tom Gazzola and his beautiful hair and me and my awesome new hat, the Oil Stream is brought to you by, don't do that again, Popeyes Louisiana Kitchen. Check out any of their locations. They've got 12 total, 7 in the Edmonton area, home of the famous Popeyes chicken sandwich. You've been listening and watching the famous Oil Stream. We'll be back next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for watching and downloading. We appreciate it.